Listen, all you New Yorkers.
Bobby Lawrence,
Hello, gentlemen.
how are you?
Thanks for being here.
I'm excited.
Welcome to the Broker Brunch.
Cheers.
Who's
Cheers.
sponsoring the mimosas for this one?
Oh, no, get Crexy back, man.
Yeah, we'll give Crexy another shout out.
Nick Wood, Crexy.
Nick Wood, Crexy,
Did
thanks
you
very
give
much.
Crexy, like in the first one? That's the champagne you were drinking?
Yeah, that was a champagne, but I don't know if it was necessarily for the Broker Brunch podcast, but it was for B6, so we were happy
So we're going to claim it.
to take it. Good to have you on, man.
I'm excited to be here. Two of my favorite, European Irishmen.
I'll take it. That'll do.
There's only a few of us, so we have to be.
How do you go from being a pro sports player to a broker?
Well, the pro sports thing I was a weekend warrior. So the Major League Lacrosse was not necessarily established. It's still not established. There's a different league now where people are getting paid more and actually having real health insurance and making somewhat of a living. When I was doing it, I was working in finance at the time. On Fridays, I go fly out to Denver, to Chesapeake, to Annapolis, Rochester, Charlotte, and practice Friday night, play a game Saturday, go out Saturday night, take an early flight back Sunday morning, and start the whole thing over again in the summer. So it was just beyond
Grueling.
beyond
That sounds
exhausting.
intense.
Oh, it was so intense, and also the fact is, like, I wasn't training as hard as I was in college. So you have these people, like half the pro players when I was doing it were serious about it. This was their life, and then the other half were people like me who, I had a job, I wasn't going to the gym all the time, so it was a little bit scary when you're out on the field. But it's something I wanted to prove to myself that I could do after college, and I did it for about 2.5 seasons, and it was fun. I mean, it wasn't like playing with all your friends in college or in high school. It was very different, but it was fun to, make $500 on the weekend and just keep playing and keep competing.
Getting to beat people up while you're doing it.
No, but that's the thing. People started beating me up. I'm like, wait, I have to work on Monday. Like, I have certain things I have to do. Like, if I get smacked in the head, like, that's gonna.
It's tough. I come from Ireland, so we don't have lacrosse, but it's
you've
big.
hurling.
It's
What's
it's
lacrosse?
He doesn't even know what.
No, I know.
We're talking about
I know what it is. So,
It's big in the Northeast, yeah. It's big.
Oh
in
my
the
gosh, yeah. I mean, where I grew up in Summit, New Jersey, I would compare it to, not to the same scale, but like Texas football almost. Like, it was almost that intense where, I had a stick in my hands when I was like 8 years old. And there was a program in Summit that brings you through. It's like a complete feeder program. And, the whole town is all, kind of focused around, when it's game day, like everybody would go. It was a pretty cool experience.
Nice.
So I'm lucky I found that sport because I think it gave me a lot of confidence in life to be able to be good at something, train for something, achieve your goals. I think that was kind of a good thing for me, especially when I got to college, to figure out that if you work hard at something and achieve something, that gives you confidence later in life to be like, I could probably do this if I really worked hard at it.
Totally.
So do you think them skills you learned playing lacrosse transferred into brokerage?
I think certain skills like discipline, so especially in college. So in college, you have to wake up at like 6 a.m. For morning practice. There's absolutely no glory in college sports, at least at Colgate University. No one was showing up to our games. It was freezing cold out. There was nothing the school barely cared. No one even knew if we won or lost the game.
Right.
But you're sacrificing so much of your time to play this sport that you love. So I think that aspect of it, like the discipline and doing things for yourself and not external benefits, that was kind of instilled in me. And that's why I think with brokerage, eventually once I got to the brokerage world, I felt confident that, if I kind of treated it like I treated sports by, doing the things I need to do, the results will eventually take care of themselves. And again, that confidence, especially in this job, because at least for me, like I've always had moments where I've wanted to quit brokerage, but kind of just stepping back and being like, I know I'm almost there. Like I know I'm almost going to be there. And I think that kind of translated.
So where did you start out?
Guggenheim Securities.
Nice.
So I came out of college I never thought about what I really wanted to do, to be honest. And I just wanted to take the highest paying job. And like all Northeastern lacrosse players, I found myself on a sales and trading floor, in Wall Street.
But Bobby is the definition of a waspy Northeasterner. Sorry.
I think that has negative correlations, and probably it should. But yes, I mean, I'm definitely waspy. I can't lie to myself. But yeah, it was.
But I think that makes it all the more impressive as well, right? Because we're saying, we're immigrants and we're hungry and blah blah blah. But Bobby comes from a certain background where traditionally maybe he didn't have to work as hard to prove himself, right? Because you were already a member of the club and you were a sports player. Probably did good in school,
No, yeah. I mean, those things, like, I could have, I've always had that, and I have, like, moved back home. And, like, I've been given every advantage in life for the most part. Where you guys, moving back home is changing careers, is changing your lives. Like, it was, that I think also helped during this process. But to go back to your question, worked at Guggenheim Securities, sales and trading floor, and hated it. Hated every single second of it, like to the point where on Sundays, like I truly had Sunday scaries. Like I did not want to go to the office on Monday.
Why?
Just because it was very Excel based and numbers based.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like I had a little bit of imposter syndrome because I didn't really know what to do, and I wasn't like, no one really trained me at the time. There was no training program, so I was given an internship to start, and I did well enough in the internship to get the job. But once that happened, nobody was kind of really guiding me, and eventually a bunch of people that brought me on got fired, so I was in a little bit of limbo. And so it was more of like I just felt like I was in imposter syndrome, like people were going to find out that I don't know anything. And I used to sit next to my boss, and my boss used to be a guy, talk about hardworking, 6 a.m., 7 p.m. every single day. He'd be a guy that'd have two phones. Wow. He'd be a two-phone guy, like here and here, and I'm sitting next to him like, what do you want me to do?
Gordon Gekko.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he'd look at me and be like, like, this isn't, you're not going to make it. And eventually that's what happened. I mean, the Guggenheim got reshuffled, and they let off 20% of the workforce, and I was part of that 20%.
Wow.
So
you had the School of Hard Knocks very early on.
Oh, 100%. And the sales and trading floor is a interesting dynamic. Like, you have people at certain points screaming at each other, grown men screaming at each other over relationships, over...
Is it like the movies? Is it that intense?
No, it's not that intense. But, I mean, there was a point where we had two grown men up from their chairs screaming at each other. And like everybody else, it's so funny, like everybody else just ignores. You just kind of sit down in your computer and like no one really says anything, but there's literally two grown men screaming at each other over money. And it's like Animal Farm. Yeah. And it's, it's not the heyday back in the 80s where there was bigger margins and people were making a lot more. It's still a great living, but not like, you could change your life with the trade back in the day. I think now it's much more structured.
Aside from sports, was there anything that pointed you towards that line of business from growing up or from your background?
Yeah, exactly. Well, Summit, New Jersey, where I grew up, I would say most people, or not most, maybe a majority of people went into finance. So it's just kind of something I knew. And
it was always around you.
Yeah, exactly. And I never really thought, and I know this sounds kind of ridiculous to say, but in college, I never really thought about what did I want to do after school until that moment, like, literally arrived. And I was like, what should I do? And then it was like, I'll just try to get the job that pays me the most amount of money and see what happens.
Right. So you shut up then, to fast forward, you ended up in real estate, similar to myself. You were at Marcus and Millichap, right? We were roughly the same time frame, just different offices.
Yeah, exactly.
You and I met here for the first time about 4 years ago.
Right.
And we were both kind of coming off the back of a few lean years at Marcus and Millichap. But you were trained the same way, and I know that they you think a lot of them, and you had a good experience there. And what was that time like over there? Who'd you work with? What did you do? Did you get any deals done?
Yeah.
Would you recommend it? Not to put you on the spot, but
Marcus was when you look back on things and you have a rosier picture than you did when you were in it.
Yeah.
I think that's how I feel about it now. Like, I'm grateful for the opportunity at Marcus. I spent just about 2 years there. I was working in Central Brooklyn on a team, but like we've talked about this before, Brian. But I think their training program sets you up for success.
Yep.
Whether you want to debate whether Marcus and the way it's established sets you up for success is another conversation. But the actual training program, I don't think you could find a better training program to actually teach you like the nuts and bolts of the industry, the skills you need to be successful, to source business. And that was kind of that. When I look back on it, I'm so grateful for.
Why Brooklyn?
Because, I mean, who wants to sell in Manhattan?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, who am I? I was probably 25 or 6 at the time. I just moved back in with my mom because I was taking this job. It's obviously fully commissioned. And I was like, I don't think I could sell buildings on the Lower East Side. I was at least aware enough at that time to be like, there's more opportunity in Brooklyn to maybe get lucky or to actually start.
You were seeing there's a runway to upside.
Yeah, exactly. Where if someone was trying to sell me that upside in, the Lower East Side or Midtown Manhattan with zero experience, good luck. Like, there's just no chance I would be willing to do that. So Brooklyn seemed like a more, just a less intimidating way to kind of get into this business.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And which markets were you focusing on in Brooklyn?
Central Brooklyn. So I was in like the Flatbush, Prospect Lefferts. So pretty much where Jermaine and DJ were kind of working now. And I had some success. Like I sold I think 2 or 3 buildings within my first year.
That's good.
And I was trying to figure out in the second year, I was like not making enough money to be comfortable, but making enough to be back in the city. But I was trying to figure out how to get to that next step, and it seemed hard. I couldn't really find the vision the way Marcus was structured, at least the team that I was on, to start making the real money you need to make for the career I wanted, for the reputation I wanted, for the track record I wanted. And so when I saw Paul start at B6, obviously knowing Paul because Paul went to Colgate, I was like, I need to join this team. I need to get on this bandwagon, or I have to probably switch careers.
How did you meet Paul Massey?
I met Paul. Excuse me. I met Paul a bunch of times. So I tried to work for Paul when I was at Guggenheim. So I met him at Cushman Wakefield. Suspenders. He had suspenders on, full suit. He comes in just this intimidating guy. He sits down, we have a nice conversation and talk about Colgate, talk about the business. But I think at that time, looking back now, knowing what I know, it seems like they were in a transitional phase as well from, Cushman and what was going to happen the next few years. So I didn't necessarily get any job offer from that. So it was more like I was looking at the time at my tail end of Marcus to be like, maybe I should go into acquisitions. I love real estate. Maybe I should try to, focus into something different within the real estate world. And thankfully, when Paul started B6, I was like, okay, let me give this one more real shot. Let me see if I can really do this. And thankfully, when I met Paul here, I had a great conversation with him, Mike, all the people that were making decisions, and he gave me the Park Slope territory. They took a risk on me because it's definitely not it's a pretty, prime market.
Yeah, it's prime market, and I think so. Since then, what you've done is you've come in. The topic of this episode is persistence,
right?
And I think you've embodied that. I mean, since I know you 4 years ago, I just feel like you epitomize what it is to do the blocking and tackling really well.
Yeah.
Right. I think, like you'd admit yourself, it's not rocket science, the whole business. I think it's coming up with a system of, cold calls, meetings, doing proposals, pitches, but it really boils down to numbers, showing up every day, doing the numbers. And I think one thing that I'm sure you agree as well, Mitch, like Bobby is
100%.
one of the most dedicated guys in the office, and even throughout COVID, you just kept doing it over and over and over again.
One more thing as well. I remember it was easy to complain during that time, the world's going crazy, whatever, nothing's happening. But I don't ever remember Bobby complaining about everything.
No, he doesn't complain.
Just did the job and gone with it.
Shows up, does the job, doesn't look for any, big praise or anything. But you just do it. And you get paid very well to do it. So it's working.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's when you in this job, and we've all seen it. Once you start looking around, like my second year at Marcus, you're not going to be doing well in this job. This job is, in my opinion, quite hard. It's not complicated, but it's quite hard, and you need to have horse blinders on to, I think, do well. And so that's kind of when I sat down, when I decided to join B6 and kind of give brokerage my real, like everything I had, I kind of made a commitment to myself as like, this is what I'm doing. Like, this is what I'm doing. I'm not going to be able to control everything in terms of closing deals and all that stuff, but I can control my output. And so, you know, early on, I think I see a lot of brokers who, you know, they made XYZ amount of calls consistently. They're building, you know, BOVs. They're meeting people. They're doing all the right things, but they're not seeing the results. And so they go home and they're disgruntled and they're like, this is never going to work for me. Or they start complaining or victimizing. But for me, like, I think that's such a bad mentality. Like, for me, it was more like, I know if I do what I need to do, it's going to take care of itself, and just keep focusing, keep doing the certain things I need to do. So even if I didn't make the money, I feel confident that this was a good week. Like, that was a good week because I did the calls I need to hit.
You had faith.
Yeah. I mean, you need to, right? Like, we've all been there. And I think you'd be, you know, in a job with 100% commission, like, everyone must at some point be like, should I keep doing this? Like, I have a friend at Amazon who barely works and is making a ton of money with stock options. Like, for God's sakes, maybe I should do that. But, you know, I look forward to every day working. Like,
right.
You know?
And I always say it, there's got to be easier ways to make a living.
You say that every day. I feel
like usually Thursday afternoons I say that. But
I think there is.
There is, right? But
they wouldn't be as much fun.
But if you're for this business and you're the type of person who likes to go out and take things by the scruff of the neck and be in charge of your own day, then I think this is the business for you.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's hard to find a job. Well, first off, I love real estate. I love getting to meet the people that I get to meet.
Why do you love real estate?
So I don't really know the answer to that. Like, I wish I had a better answer for that, because I even remember when I was at Guggenheim, again, I'm sitting next to this crazy boss. Whenever he'd get up, I'd be like reading The Real Deal and The Commercial Observer and all this kind of blog stuff, and I have really no idea why, but it was always interested me. But, you know, that I think somehow when I went to Marcus Millichap, like, I was able to marry that real estate love, and then I also realized I love sales and competing, and it ended up working out. But
I hear a lot of people say it's like a tangible version of finance or investing.
Okay,
So you know the way finance is securities, derivatives, it's much more abstract. Whereas real estate, you're looking at the bricks. You can see exactly that it's physically there in front of you. You can touch it, feel it, but apply the same thought process to it. That
I'd agree with that.
I don't think, like, I'm interested in, like, getting into the acquisitions. Well, I'm not anymore. But, like, I used to think that way. Maybe I'd like the acquisition side, but kind of knowing people on the other side and knowing what their day-to-day is like, it's very similar to our job, except it's so number specific. What I get a lot of energy from, at least at the moment, is meeting these people.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them are, you know, wild and whatever, but it's just so fascinating to meet some of these entrepreneurs, or have a day where you go meet a private equity person to a Hasidic person to a person who's been running an auto body shop for 20 years, whose building is now worth $20 million. Like, those conversations and learning those stories is such a fun part of your day. And I think, kind of, at least for me, like, you learn so much from those conversations, and it's kind of inspiring in some of them.
I saw a post you did a few weeks ago regarding a closing dinner you had with one of your clients. You went to a local pizza place.
Exactly.
Who's that client?
That was Dom Cristallo. His family owned the building for 60 years. They ran a laundry services through that building in Park Slope. We sold it. I was like, Dom. And Dom was a great client, like, really nice guy, understanding, old school Italian guy. And I was like, let's go out and get a steak. This was his last building, so he was like, you know, this was a lifestyle change.
Yeah.
Like, let's grab a steak, let's grab a burger. He's like, nah, I'm good. Let's just grab a piece of pizza. Meanwhile, he's got, like, you know, $1 million check. He has a multi-million dollar check in his envelope, like in his little pieces of paper. So we're eating at this Bay Ridge pizza shop. He's got, you know, a $2 million+ check in the folder. I'm like, okay.
Is who he is, you know.
Yeah,
he's not changing for anyone or anything.
And 2 pieces of plain pizza, and a Coca-Cola, $10, and we're out of there.
I think one of the biggest myths in New York real estate is that every building owner is some sort of CEO in a suit. These are not the cases, particularly in the boroughs. They're very real people, and they're very interesting people with their own stories to share, which is a good example.
Yeah.
100%.
I mean, like, I'm trying to figure out, like, what happened in my territory in Q1, it takes time for all the things to trade through Acris. So I was just kind of looking at Property Shark like last night. I think there was like 16 trades, which is low, but the average sales price was $3.7 million in my territory. And most of these people are not institutions, at least, for the moment. A lot of these people are people that kind of risked it all, took some serious chance, have held for a long time, or real estate was kind of their second business, like they bought the building, but now the real estate's worth more than the business, like it always is. So it's just so cool to kind of meet these people and learn their stories.
What is for you in Brooklyn? What neighborhoods do you cover?
So I cover. I mean, if you're familiar with Brooklyn, everything south of Atlantic Avenue, everything north of 36th Street, everything west of the Park. So Park Slope, Gowanus, Cobble Hill, Carroll Gardens, Red Hook, Columbia Waterfront District, Greenwood Heights, Windsor Terrace are the neighborhoods that I cover.
You drinking the Kool-Aid? You moved there, right? you went over there. You're camped down there.
So I'm just north of it.
Okay.
I'm in Fort Greene, and I'm like a 5-minute walk to my territory.
Do you think that's a benefit, or does it matter?
100%.
Yeah.
So I'm selling a building down the street from me right now, where I met the brother taking out his garbage. Excuse me. So I was walking to go to work. I knew the building was for sale. There was a building for owner in the window. And I see this guy taking out the garbage. He just looks like an owner. And so I'm like, hey, I'm Bobby Lawrence, blah, blah, blah. End up being the brother of the guy handling the sale, the main point person in the family. And through there, 2 months later, got hired, and we just sent a contract out on it last week.
Amazing.
So, and then I also think it helps when you say, yeah, I live in the territory. Or like, people a lot of times will say, where's your office? I go, Bryant Park, but I live in Fort Greene. I can meet you at any time. And I think that kind of helps because you're kind of living and breathing your market.
Yeah.
I mean, has that helped you, Mitch?
Mitch is an Upper East Sider.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, does it work against me? I don't know. I sometimes, when I'm going to meet I was with a non-profit on Friday, and they were very much a local community organisation. And she was like, "Oh, where do you live?" I was almost embarrassed to say the Upper East Side.
Really?
So,
yeah.
So
talk about imposter syndrome.
Yeah. So maybe it does a little bit. Obviously, they've never said anything directly like you should live in the Bronx if you want to be a broker there. But I've felt that a couple of times. Not a lot, but a couple of times. But a lot of the owners don't live there as well. So, but I think it depends which market you're in. Like you're on Park Slope, and it's more a mature market than the Bronx.
If you're going up to the auto body shop guy, or to the guy who sells the building and just wants to go for pizza, like those, a Bay Ridge guy, like those are like quintessential old school Brooklyn people. I mean, they probably respect that you're in the Brooklyn neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
Guy investing up in the Bronx, he might be there, as much as you.
What do you think with Upper Manhattan?
Same as that. I hear what you're saying. The non-profits, and maybe some of the more mom and pop owners, it's probably more interesting to them that you live in the area. And if it is, it is. But if I feel like for most people, it doesn't really matter. They can see your passion for the area, and if you know the area, and living there.
But I think from a selfish standpoint, like, I think I know more about my market than any of my competing brokers because they don't live there.
Yeah.
Like, I am literally, when I go to my gym, walking past buildings I've sold, buildings I've pitched. Or if I'm going out, I'm going into, a lot of times I'm going out in my territory. So every time I'm doing something, and this is kind of the negative as well, is I'm always thinking about real estate. I'm always taking pictures on my phone, like call that person, that retail is vacant, this project is done. Or, like sending a picture like, hey, this project looks good to a hopefully potential client.
That's why he makes the big bucks.
That's why he makes the big bucks. One thing you said that I thought jumped out, and you're very realistic as well and honest, and I think you said about potentially like quitting, or it comes into your head that like maybe this is, just pack it in. How do you overcome that? And I think from the perspective of persistence, how do you find that faith that you're in the right seat, that you're doing the right thing, and that this is worth persevering on?
That's a good question. And I don't know like what the magic formula is, but I think it goes back to me having the confidence when I was younger playing sports. Like I hate to keep bringing it back to sports, but it just instills in you that if you work hard at something and achieve something, you can probably do that thing later in life. So I think that's instilled in me. And then like I think about, I don't know if you guys have heard the book Good to Great by Jim Collins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a classic. And one of the quotes I think about when I'm thinking like, this job is so tough. It's like more of it was the Stockdale paradox. So Jim Stockdale was an admiral during the Vietnam War. He was in the Hanoi Hilton, which was a PO prisoner of war camp in Vietnam. He was there for over 5 years. And I guess one of the things he thought, like people were asking him all the time, like he was tortured over like 25 times, and people were asking him like, how did you get out of this? How did you survive this when most of your equals or didn't? And one of the things he just said is like he had unwavering faith that he was going to be able to get out of that situation. However, he wasn't. The people that didn't were the optimists. So they'd say, I'm going to get out by Christmas of next year.
Yeah.
And so when Christmas of next year happened and it rolled around, those people all gave up and died. And he was like saying, I know my realities. I'm not exactly sure when I'm going to get out there. So kind of brace your reality, understand what's actually happening, but have unwavering faith that you're going to be able to get through it. And it seems ridiculous to compare that to real estate brokerage, but I think the sentiment is still true. It's like, if this is what you're doing, do it. It's going to take a lot to get through it, but know that you're going to. And I think sometimes I think about that when someone retrades on a price or a deal falls through, I don't get hired on something. That kind of mentality has really helped me as I've come to more so when I was at B6. When I was at Marcus, I would beat myself up over every day of not making money or the deal not happening, and go home dejected and sad and feel like, why am I not doing this? But I've kind of transitioned myself to being more process oriented and trusting that it's going to work out.
Yeah, well, like what's the worst that's going to happen at the end of the day,
Right? I guess you switch jobs. I don't know. I mean, yeah, exactly. And this isn't life or death. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's one thing to keep in perspective. It's like, all the good things in my life are my family, friends, everything like that is okay. So, well, I take this very seriously. I think you also need to have the perspective like this is a job.
There's always another deal anyway, so it's like just move on to the next one.
But it's easier said than done, right? Like
Yeah.
that's like even this past week I was waiting for an offer and somebody got hired on something else, and I remember being like, ugh. Like, I was down for a little bit, but I think if you have the ability to be somewhat like robotic in your emotions, which I'm trying to work on to a certain extent, to just kind of, again, being process oriented, understanding that, keep telling myself that it's going to work out, keep pushing yourself, and putting the blinders on, there's no other option, then that's, I think, kind of the way I've transitioned how I thought about this job,
It sounds like you're not attaching yourself to any one outcome, and I think that's serving you.
Zero.
Yeah.
Right?
Because and even not putting a date on your success is probably helpful, because that's one thing when I went into it, I was like, okay, within 12 months I have to have done this, and then within 2 years I have to have done this, but ultimately all that's doing is giving you stress about stuff that's not actually important, and it's more important that going back to your process is, cold calls, meetings, like it's the blocking and tackling, bringing it back to the sports, that makes it, that's how you measure your success in the business.
Also, there's been external factors. So take a 12-month snippet of time frame. There's been external factors that can come into play, like interest rates, inflation.
You can't account for that.
COVID, exactly.
Yeah.
So every situation is different.
I mean, we've been, like, the reality of our situation is we've been hit with it.
Yeah.
Like COVID, interest rates, the 2019 rent laws. Like, I think any broker that has been brokering within the past 5-6 years have probably at a certain point has questioned, like, if you're at least starting your career, has questioned, like, whoa, this is really tough. Maybe I should transition. I don't think those thoughts are necessarily bad, but at the end of the day, you need to hear those thoughts and figure out where those are coming from, and then just kind of recommit back to the business if that's what you really want to do. Like, I feel like some people just hang here just because they think they should, but no, like, the moment you think you don't want to do this job or you're not as invested, I think is a moment you should probably leave.
Yeah, because you need that aggression, don't you? You need that perseverance, like that you're going to attack everything, because to your point, the moment you start playing defense or being on the back foot, then it's the business is just, it's already so hard.
Yeah, exactly.
That if you're not attacking it, you're...
And what you were saying before, like, I need to make this money by, let's say, my first 12 months. And there probably was somebody that was your level that made that money.
Yeah.
And you're like, but I think I can do that. Why did they,
Right.
what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
And comparison is, the thief of joy. So it's like, you really just got to be laser focused on what you're doing, because looking around, seeing what other people are, I guess anything in life for the most part, like looking around, seeing what other people are doing, I think is good, but to a certain point you have to believe that, you know, your structure, you have the ability to make it work.
You have to believe that's what makes you a happy person as well, right?
Right.
I mean, you're a happy guy, you're coming in here, you're running your own business, but you're not looking over your, like, if you look over and you see someone else doing something else, you're probably happy for them. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
it doesn't really affect you what they do, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you have your own goals, you lay them out, you set your stall, you know what you're trying to do. Whatever happens with the market happens with the market. You can only control what you can, like all the cliches, but it's so true, isn't it? It's just, there's nothing good comes out of looking at someone else and saying, like, I need to do that now.
And I think B6 has done a good job of building that culture. I'm
Yeah.
sure at Marcus, and Mitch is, I don't even know how he's become successful.
Mitch is an anomaly.
Mitch is an alien.
Yeah.
He literally came here.
He swam here.
He literally knew nothing, somehow got into the Bronx and started making it happen. It's an unbelievable story. But
Someone told him the Bronx was Midtown Manhattan, and he just went at it and didn't know any difference.
he thought he was going to be selling office buildings, and then he's driving around in strangers' cars, just trying to figure it out.
He's got some wild stories.
So what's going on in Brooklyn at the moment? Obviously, the Gowanus rezoning. How's that going along?
So that's all 421A based, you know.
Yeah.
So that was kind of that was a bummer, because everyone knew the Gowanus rezoning was happening, and I don't think I did a good enough job of, in terms of a sales perspective, like building those relationships from a sales perspective to get in there. I mean, these were people that had relationships for 3 or 4 years, and I just couldn't figure out how to get in there, because the Gowanus rezoning has been talked about since 2008. But so since the Gowanus rezoning passed, which was last year, I think we've seen 25 permits filed, over 6.5 million square feet of space,
Wow.
over 6,000 apartments coming. And, like, I don't know if you guys have ever been in Gowanus, but, like,
Just a canal, isn't it?
there is the canal, but, like, could you imagine you have this area that's heavily industrial, you know, a 50 by 100 M1 industrial building, and now next to it you're going to have a 100-foot tall structure. They're just completely changing the landscape.
Building a whole new neighborhood.
Yeah, it's like a completely new neighborhood. And I think this is where our rezoning was successful. Like, this is 6,000 new units, all MIH, so a portion of them will be affordable, that are coming to a neighborhood where its industrial character doesn't make any sense for where it's located in Brooklyn, and given where we are in New York City with the housing crisis. So I think that is one thing in my market I'm super pumped about, because I think it's going to, rising tide will lift all boats type thing, where it's going to feed off into other neighborhoods that are contiguous with Gowanus, as well as, you know, any protected tax class 2A, 2B building in my hood in Gowanus, I think is a buy. Just because when all these new residents come in, all this retail, all this new infrastructure, I think it's going to be a really...
And you've been selling some of them in tax class 2B buildings, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's Brooklyn, at least in my brownstone Brooklyn area, and I think overall in the Brooklyn market. I wonder if it's true for, like, Central Brooklyn and South Brooklyn, but everybody's looking for tax class 2A, 2B buildings. Most people don't want to touch rent stabilization.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain tax class 2A, 2B?
Yeah, I mean, tax class 2A, 2B is a protected tax class. So if you're tax class 2, technically how we underwrite it, I don't know how you guys underwrite it, but we underwrite that the taxes will be about 26% of your gross income. That's the most amount your taxes will be. So if I'm buying a tax class 2 building, 2, not 2A, 2B, above 10 units, and let's say the taxes are 15% of the gross income, most buyers are underwriting that it's going to eventually get to 26% of the gross income. So that is like a huge factor, right? And at least that's now. I mean, in 5 years, we'd be saying 35%, but that's how most people are underwriting it, because your taxes aren't protected. Tax class 2A, 2B, under 10 units, I don't know the difference between 2A and 2B, to be honest with you, but I know that they can't go up more than 8% over year over year, or 30% over 5 years.
2A is a component of the retail. A certain component has to be from the retail revenue.
That's 2A.
And then 2B is the resi,
Right.
regular resi. But to your point, yeah, they're, what is it, 8% every year? That's what they're capped at.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you're an investor, you're trying to minimize, I mean, especially in New York City where you have this legislative risk, you're just trying to minimize risk. So what have we seen so far? Like, free market rents have exploded since COVID, but taxes have continued to go up for buildings that aren't protected tax classes. So if I'm a buyer and I can put a formula to a tax bill and have some sort of comfortability on where this is going to go, and hopefully this will stay low, then that's why I think a lot of investors are kind of flocking to the 2A, 2B buildings, and what we've seen with Carlisle, which
that's their business plan.
So tell us about what's their business plan. What are they thinking? What's been happening?
So in fourth quarter of 21 is when we've seen Carlisle first buy a building in Brooklyn. Since then, they've bought 142 buildings since fourth quarter of 21.
Wow.
142.
How's that even possible? Off-market deals, on-market, a mixture of both?
Mixture of both.
Portfolios.
Some portfolios, but not that many portfolios, I don't think.
That's a lot of deals.
That sounds super management intensive for a private equity firm. Like they have a management partner?
Yeah, they have management partners.
Yeah.
And so they're, I think they bought 71 properties in Bushwick. Then,
wow.
So by neighborhood, it's like Bushwick, they're the most active. Bed-Stuy was second. Ocean Hill was third. And then Park Slope, I think, was fourth. And then you have a few in downtown Brooklyn, a few in Clinton Hill. But, it's been unbelievable how much influence they've had over the Brooklyn real estate market in such a short period of time. Now, I don't exactly know, what their strategy is. I think if they tried to sell as a portfolio right now, they would be losing money unless you found another institutional buyer to maybe come in and buy it, or I don't know, maybe you structure it all and go public. I have no idea, but
why buy 70 buildings? You said 70 buildings, right?
No,
170 buildings.
142.
142 rather than two or three in Manhattan. Why would you buy so many small buildings?
Well, clearly they think they're more bullish. Tax class. Yeah, they're more bullish in Brooklyn. I don't want to speak for them, but I would imagine the reason being is they believe in free market rents. They know there's an affordability crisis, and then you have the protected tax class. So most of the buildings, not all of them, but most of them have been protected tax class, have been renovated where they don't have to do much renovation at all. All the paperwork has to be very clean if it's some sort of sub rehab, and they're just buying it and just cash flowing it, and that's it. So it's wild to see. I don't know. Have you guys? They don't do anything up.
No, I actually spoke to an owner who owns a bunch of three families around the Bronx a few weeks ago. She spoke to Carlisle because people reaching out to Carlisle with the small multifamily portfolios. She reached out to them, and the Bronx isn't ready for them yet, or they're not ready for the Bronx, however way you want to spin it. But they said they might look in Kingsbridge and Riverdale, the more mature neighbourhoods, in the next 5 years or so. So Who knows? In 5-10 years, maybe, but not today.
Yeah, it's Yeah, they've propped up a lot of the market. Especially people in owners in Bushwick. Think about if you had 5-year money and it's coming due. There's not that many buyers that are willing to buy sub 6 cap anymore. And they are. They're about 50 to 25 basis points, at least historically. We'll see how that changes, with interest rates and everything like that. But
it's because their cost of capital is so low.
Yeah, exactly. So it will be, and so they've been able to save a lot of these people from, either losing money or trying to negotiate a higher rate. And for Central Brooklyn, it's been a savior. They haven't bought as much in Park Slope, and I'm not really sure why, but I was wild to see.
You should question them.
I know.
Why not?
We're asking them now. Carlisle.
Yeah, Carlisle. Shout out to Carlisle. Right, yeah.
We don't have a dial-in number, but
I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to say their names, but here we
but
are.
I would be,
anything
whether
happens on the broker pitch.
Carlisle or any other Carlisle. What I'd be worried about is making a business plan in New York that's specifically around, buildings being market rate, because it just seems that politically, with the stroke of a pen, your whole business plan can be upside down, right? You saw what happened with anyone who made big bets in 17 or 18. Vacancy decontrol or turning over units from rent stabilized to free market, and then overnight in 2019 that business plan, it's on its head, and there's no mechanism to do that. So
right.
I'm sure they have a diversified portfolio, but anyone looking to just do tax class 2A or 2B, you have to imagine there's a little bit of vulnerability there to that plan, because it's so susceptible to change at any given time, and if it does, your whole business is on its head.
Do you see what mansion tax in LA? Have you seen that?
Yeah, there's a big rush right now.
So they have to sell everything by April the 1st. So these brokers were selling a bunch of houses because anything over $5 million, which in LA is not considered a mansion, right?
Here it's $1 million, right? That's the mansion tax in New York is $1 million.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
I think that's true.
You have to pay an extra 4% in tax, which is
Real money at that.
Yeah, people like hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah. It's a broker fee.
And also, even if you you sold the house for less than what you paid for it, you still have to pay the tax.
Wow.
Which doesn't make any sense. Like people giving away free cars with the house or whatever. But
just anything to stay below the.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, is this house or commercial?
Houses.
Not commercial.
No. Actually, no. I think it might apply to commercial as well.
I think it's resi, but
we'll have to do the next podcast in LA and figure it out.
yeah, have to get someone from LA. No, but to your point, it's like that ends up being like a real difference.
Yeah, huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like those things as a broker,
it's out of control. It's external effect.
With that, but like those are the things as a broker that, what's the word I'm looking for? I would say excite me is not the right word, but like that's where deal volume comes in.
Yeah. Mhm.
Everybody operates with an inertia. Like, it's like when you sign up for a free subscription, most likely you're going to keep that subscription until like it really starts to bother you, then you unsubscribe. Like something needs to happen. So I feel like we've kind of been in this like in between, this, we're waiting for this or this or this, but when something like that gets ruled, I feel like that's when a lot of deal volume will start to pick up.
Bob Knuckles spoke about this actually in terms of the most transactional volume. If you look back over time, I think 2012 was the highest peak because there was change in tax law. And it's the biggest driver. It's the biggest driver of decision making is taxes.
Because think about it, if you're on the fence, you're like, wait, I'm gonna wait next year and then I have to pay more in taxes. Like, no chance. Like, I'll just do it right now.
Yeah.
So it's always that I always find interesting. So it'd be interesting if that's for a commercial. That'd be we should figure that out. To see, at least in LA, I wonder what would happen in that market if it was for commercial.
Have any stabilized buildings been trading in your hood?
Yeah, I sold an 8-family 2 weeks ago. 3 free market, 5 rent stabilized for 5 cap off the current income, but I think pretty conservatively can get it to a 6.5 cap once the leases turn over, and that seems to be where people want to. That was protected tax class building. That seems to be where people kind of want to play, at least in the better neighborhoods of Brooklyn. They want to be above 6 after renovation costs and all that type of stuff. So, I don't think those are bad buys. I don't know what you guys are volume in Upper Manhattan, but if you could not lose money on a stabilized building, then I feel it's almost like you're an interest rate trader. You're like, and interest rates drop to 4%. Your 5-year money drops to 4%, and you can refi out, and like then you have a nice spread, and then maybe rent laws change, then it's a home run. So I understand why, there isn't that. Those are the hardest things to sell. Those are the least things in vogue right now. But I think it could be. We're starting to get to the point where it's like 6.5, 7 caps in good neighborhoods. Like this seems like a good opportunity to buy.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, what are you guys seeing when it comes to like rent stabilized? I know you have a bunch of rent stabilized stuff.
Yeah, I think most people are just really concerned about the expense side of it.
Yeah.
And keeping, like we underwrite 1,000 per unit for insurance or
Right.
1,000 for fuel, and like owners who operate these every day, and obviously they have their own advantage on this when we're talking about buying or selling a deal, but they're saying like, listen, it's double that. Like fuel is 2,000 a unit, insurance is at least double that. It's very tough for them to pencil it out when it's so tight with interest rates. If you're buying a cap rate at a 6.5 and you're borrowing at 6, there's no room for error there.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. And maybe my 6.5 cap is really a 6.
And you always hear the broker 6.5 cap versus the real 6.5 cap, and it's kind of insulting when someone says that in the phone. It's like, well, I actually think it is real.
But yeah, it's like I think I was at like a 35% expense ratio off the income of the building I sold. But who knows? I mean,
yeah.
I feel like especially the expenses are changing so quickly. It's hard.
That's what scares everybody is those expenses.
Yeah. Talk about unknown.
You can predict the income side, you can't predict the expense side.
Right.
But
a lot of it goes back to you were saying before in terms of like just wealth preservation and buying some bricks. And if it gets to a low enough basis, you might not make a ton of money today, but you're not going to lose money, and there might be upside in the future. So maybe that's the perspective they're taking.
If you have a long-term outlook, if you don't need to like return capital in a 5-year time frame, I think it's starting to. I mean, it's
starting to make sense. Yeah.
It's a gamble, but it could start to make sense, and that's how the people that were bidding on that 8-family and some of the other rent stabilized stuff that I have are more long-term oriented. So not your like typical syndicators or kind of middle market private equity people who are churning and burning value add to refi their equity out, all that type of stuff. They're more like putting a lot of cash into the deal, and seemingly have like a 10-year outlook. And I don't know, if I had a lot of money, I would definitely consider it, because like at a certain point, you know, if you could just hold on, you know, I feel like the pendulum always goes way too right and way too left. Like there's no one ever can play in the, like NYC politics can't play in the middle. It's just not going to happen. Yeah. So you would think, now the gamble is how long, it would swing back the other way to a much more pro-owner, like market. But who knows?
Who knows? Stay tuned for the
not
podcast.
Right now.
Exclusively here first.
We'll be unpacking it live.
Well, 10 years from now, we'll be.
In Brooklyn, Bobby, where would you buy if you were looking to buy it yourself?
I mean, I'm biased. I'm obviously speak my own market. So I think Gowanus, 2A, 2B, anything in those neighborhoods, I would buy. I like Greenwood Heights, which is just north of Sunset Park and just below Park Slope, where, you know, your price per square foot is about 10 to 20% less than Park Slope. Your retail is like $40 a square foot, where in Park Slope you can get $100 a square foot, but they're not that far. We're talking like half a mile to a mile, depending on the area. And you're starting to see more development in those neighborhoods that should be coming online within the next few years. So that's a market that I've focused in, and I also think is a good buy for long-term upside. I think, you know, obviously Park Slope, like if you buy a beautiful corner building in Park Slope, you're going to do, because of the location, like most likely you're going to do just fine. Yeah. But if you're looking for real upside, I think, you know, within the Gowanus area, as well as probably more so Greenwood Heights, because everyone now at this point knows what's going on in
depends on your risk appetite as a buyer, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, if me, that would be my answer. If it was me, that's where I'd be looking, because I do think it would be hard for those to be terrible buys, like for that to go terribly wrong, unless you overpaid, over leveraged. But I think in the long term, I believe in those markets.
Nice.
What about you guys? Where would you be?
I hear what you're saying with the 2A, the 2B product. I think there's definitely a business plan there, and being able to control the tax side of the expense is huge, right? Because that's probably, as you say, can go up to 26%. So that's your biggest burden on the expenses. Right. That makes a lot of sense to me. But I almost like the contrarian play of buying rent stabilized right now, like heavily rent stabilized that do have high taxes, because you know that your taxes are penciled in.
Right. But do we really know that? Why can't they go up more than 26% of the tax bill? Like, you know, that's.
You're right. I mean,
because I feel like we hear that all the time, and people say like, every buyer underwrites at 26%.
It seems to be the arbitrary number that we all agree on. Right. But to your point, I mean, who's to stop an assessor coming in and saying, actually, we're going to go to 30 or 35 or 40, you know? But if you were to find a deal that cash flows nicely with heavy expenses, with a high tax rate penciled in, and you get decent term on your debt, you have to imagine you're going to be in a good place in a 5 to 10 year hold.
I hope so. I mean, we're all kind of betting it, right? Like
betting our careers on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We have to believe it. Drinking no Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have to believe in the long-term upside in New York City. We're probably in the wrong seats. Yeah,
no, I agree. What about stepping back a little bit from the more real estate side of it, but if someone came to you and said, I want to get into this business, do you think it's a good time to get in today? We're recording this April 2023. What would you tell them?
I'd ask them why they think they want to get into this business. I try to understand as much as possible about.
That's a great question. Yeah, that is,
you know what I mean?
That's a good way of.
Because again, like kind of what we were talking about earlier in the podcast, like you got to be a little off to do this job. I really do.
It's got to be something not quite
I think
right.
Most people in this office have something off with them.
Yeah, there's a lot of characters in this business.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? And you don't need
that couldn't operate in a regular office, right? Like, we've no HR.
You're trying to be polite.
Like, let's call a spade a spade. We're not that employable.
Yeah, no, and everyone's so different. Like, there's really no one profile that makes a good broker.
I'd say that.
It couldn't be some people could not be further apart from each other in how they conduct themselves on a day-to-day basis, just their overall demeanor. But yeah, to answer your question, I would want to understand why they want to be in this business. And I think if you do want to be in this business, I think today is a great time. I mean, what people say is always during these difficult periods of the market is a great time to learn. And I think that does make sense because like everything is hard. Nothing is easy. Trying to sell the deal is hard. Trying to get it into contract is hard. Negotiating during the contract is a nightmare. So like, and then getting into the closing table. So I feel like what I'm excited about, because I know it's eventually going to come, whether that be 10 years when I come back on the podcast and we're all old and gray, but like once the market shifts back, you know, once the levee breaks, I feel like we'll be so prepared because one, we've built a lot of relationships, but two, we've kind of hardened our skills in terms of like selling deals, putting them into contract, and kind of being able to figure out how to close deals.
You don't want to join when the market's at the top, right? Because then you miss the boat. The ship's sailed. Yeah. You want to build the relationship.
Everyone's had those relationships.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's like this is the time to get in. Like it's really tough. It's really hard. Nothing is easy. I suppose people in it longer would probably say it's never easy, but this has to be something different. I mean, banks aren't lending.
Yeah.
You can't make money on multifamily as an owner.
Which is most of the product. Yeah.
But still, somehow we're all optimistic here about New York City. I think that's testament to New York.
100%.
Yeah, I think, like, think about like 09, 010 if you got into the business, and then, in 2011 and 12, it exploded. Hopefully, I think that's when a lot of people, at least in this office, had great
years. They had a nice uplift.
Yeah, so it'd be nice to have that uplift, and I think it's coming.
Same.
I feel like I'm doing more proposals than I've ever have done. And maybe that's a fact of me being in business longer, but also just I think a lot of people are thinking about what's going on. Like that instead of that this whole thing has kind of made people think with interest rates rising, like, wait, how am I doing? Where am I with my debt? Like I keep seeing these headlines that Signature Bank is closing. What's going on in the market? So maybe in the second half of this year, we could see some serious deal volume. I don't know what you guys are kind of seeing with your clients and everything like that.
They need a broker now more than ever.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, they need a link into the market. You said the same. You're doing more BOVs now than you ever have before. Giving a shout out to my production man Kaz here.
Everything okay, Kaz?
Kaz is a hero.
Yeah.
This man has been through it today, and I've
He's
experienced
jumping around to these cameras like they're.
I've experienced it all.
Yeah, you have. So what's next for Bobby Lawrence?
Just the same old. I mean, I've got Jack, my associate, so I think
you want to grow a team.
Shout out to Jack.
Shout out to Jack. Get him on the board.
Great job. You should be in the office today.
But you want to grow a team, right? You want to grow a team, and
yeah, I mean that would be. I think it'd be great. It'd be very fulfilling to build a team to get more market share and just continue to do more deals. I mean that's kind of the only thing I'm focused on right now.
What about personally? So you live in Brooklyn. You've got a girlfriend. She's moving in with you shortly. Right?
I know. August.
Big step.
She's.
There's no turning back.
I know. 2 married men, one with kids. You guys are wise. You need to be sharing some advice with me.
I've seen it all.
But yeah, we'll be moving in August. I'm excited about that, and
nice.
I'm going to continue to live in Brooklyn. I'm living in Fort Greene right now, as I mentioned, but maybe I'll move actually into the neighborhood.
Nice.
And yeah, just all good.
Keep crushing it.
Enjoying New York City life.
Good.
Bobby, easily one of the most likable guys in the business.
100%.
And it was great to have you on the Broker Brunch.
Thank you, Bobby.
I
Thanks for
appreciate
coming.
you both.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers, brother.